Stye North. Here we are back at the lean-to project. I had to skip a day of filming because after I did part 3, the weather turned on me and it started to rain. And it's been raining ever since. It only quit just a few hours ago. I think we got probably inch and a half of rain over the last 24 hours. And to my pleasure, I found that my whole shelter area is nice and dry. It's bone dry in here. Everything else is saturated. It's soaking wet out here. My little pond behind me rose about 3 inches overnight. There's a pond behind the camera that was very small. Now it's about 35 feet across. So we got a lot of rain. We got quite a bit of rain. So that kept me out of the woods to work on this. If it was completed and finished, I would have loved sitting underneath the shelter with a fire going out front and sat out here in the rain. But until this is finished, I'd prefer to have a better shelter to be in during a rainstorm. So what I have done is I've decided that on my bed, instead of me notching out these logs, putting all that labor into that, that's one thing a person needs to keep in mind is how labor intense are the activities you're doing. You don't want to burn up all your energy and all your calories when you're putting things together. For all of that effort, you have to replace that energy. So are you packing in enough food to do that? Are you going to be able to gather enough food to replace all of that expended energy? So that's a consideration to make when you're doing these bushcraft projects. And from a survival aspect, I guess, that you conserve that energy as much as possible. So what I've decided I'm going to do, instead of scoring and notching and flattening out these 2 logs for my bed, I'm going to put these logs right up to the back of my shelter, and I'm going to cut some out of this log I have laying here, this pole. I'm going to cut some big stakes, and I'm going to put a couple of stakes at each end of the logs on the outer edge, and then I'll stack my actual bed rails starting with these supports, these back supports, out to those stakes. Those stakes will hold all those bed rails in place. I don't have to worry about them coming loose, coming off there. And what I'll do is I'll channel the ground a little bit for these logs to set so that they don't roll back and forth. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm going to be working on for now. And I'm hoping that I can get my bed done today, and then I can get back to finishing off these 2 lean-to or tripod ends, get them fully encased, and hopefully get the boughs on my bed today. We'll see how far I can go. I don't have too many hours. Of course, sunlight is a rare commodity out here, and the sun sets about 4 o'clock, so I better get to work. Okay, folks, here we are. We're back. Time for a little bit of a coffee break. You've heard me in the other videos. There's one thing in this world I have a hard time doing without, and that's my coffee. I always have coffee in my pack. Today I was smart. Before I left the homestead, I put a small thermos of coffee in, so I don't even have to get a fire going today and make a pot. But here's what I've done. Okay, now I moved the logs back into place. Both of these logs are back as far as I want them. And then what I did was I cut 4 about 18 to 20 inch poles that are about 1.5 inches, 2 inches around, put a point on each one, and I batoned them into place, 2 at each end of these logs. Now my next step is, you can't see them I'm sure on the camera, but off to my left I drug in 3 dead standing maples, good hardwood. They're very solid. They've got some spring to them still. They're not rotten because they were standing. They're good and dry. I cut them down, drug them in. Now I'm going to cut those into about 7.5 foot to 8 foot lengths. And I'm going to probably get 6 to 8 of those are going to fit in here. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to cut those up, bring them in here, and then I'll turn the camera back on as I lay those out. So, and show you how those lay out on these logs. So hang with me. I'll be right back. After I have a little bit of coffee, of course. Well, folks, here we are. I cut those 3 maples up. I managed to get 9 really nice logs that are about, 3 to 4 inches around. On the narrow end, maybe down to 2.5 inches. And I cut 1 large pole. They're all cut about 7.5 feet long. And I laid them all in here, as you can see. I arranged them so that it's as level as possible. Keep it nice and level. Now, I always try to do this. I did not channel that large log too deep into the ground, just barely in. This one towards the back is channeled in quite a bit. The reason for that is I don't know, I've got a thing about it. I like my head on that side of my shelters. But where I'm going to have the head end of my bed, I prefer it to be a little bit uphill. It's just a habit I've developed over the years, is I like to have my head uphill. I guess I don't like that blood running to my little brain and putting any pressure where I don't want it. So I got it leaning a little bit uphill. Now my next step. Now it's good, it's solid. I laid down on it, it ain't moving anywhere. Now what you want to do after you get your logs in here is go along with a hatchet or your machete or an axe and knock off any nubs that are sticking up that are very, if they're more than, say, 3/4 of an inch tall, knock those nubs off, smooth them out a little bit. But now the next step is I have to go gathering boughs, and I'm going to bring a bunch of pine boughs in, and I'm going to load this up with pine boughs, and I'm going to get a good foot, probably a good foot of pine boughs on top of this. The reason for the larger log out front, it holds you in the bed. Once you get these boughs on here and you get your bedroll on here and you mat that down, it starts breaking down to your weight, you'll have a natural crown over here on the front. It makes a great place to sit here in front of your fire. It also keeps you in bed. If you're a cowboy in your sleep, you won't fall off your horse. So my next step is head out in the woods and trim up some boughs and get them in here and get them on this bed, and then I can jump back into finishing off my 2 tripod ends. And you can see at the head of the bed here that the tripod end is pretty spacious. It'll be pretty spacious. I'll have a lot of room for gear in both of these. And then there was one thing. Somebody had said to me, well, when you go off camera and you're doing all of this, and you're cutting these big logs, are you cheating? Are you sneaking off and firing up the old chainsaw and buzzing this stuff up quick and then coming in here and making it appear like you hand cut all that? Well, hang tight a second. The tools I use out here are not power tools. I do not use power tools when I'm bushcrafting. Those that do, more power to them. They'll come when we don't have gasoline handy or you can't get parts for your chainsaw. And you need to be able to do these things without those. Folding camp saw. This is a simple one. It's a Gerber. They're not terribly expensive. I love this handsaw, little folding handsaw. It's got a coarse blade for quick, deep cutting, larger stuff. It also has in its pouch another blade that's a fine cut, and I use that a lot of times when I'm having to make fine cuts, like if I'm making number 7 notches for snaring or number 7 notches for making pot hangers, things like that. So it's nice because it comes with 2 blades. And yes, I would say 60% of the material here that has been cut was done with this folding saw. Next is this saw. This is kind of an unusual saw. It's a bow shape. These were carried by the U.S. Forest Service. They got a clip on them. They hang from your belt with the curved side forward so that when you're hiking through the woods, it'll roll up over anything that you're walking against, brush, logs. The teeth aren't catching on things. They're made to just be comfortable for hauling around in the woods. And what I like about this saw, the fact that I really like about this saw, is this is a back cut saw. It does not cut on a forward push. It only cuts on the backward pull. So all your power's in the pull. You don't have any power in the push. If you want to put all your weight into something like that, go right ahead and try. But your power's really in the pull. With this curved design, you do not have to put any downward pressure on. It naturally with that arch, pulls the teeth down into the wood fiber and makes the cut. It has rakers. It has 2 teeth, a raker, 2 teeth, a raker, 2 teeth, a raker. Those rakers, what those do is they clean the cut on your forward push. They clean the sawdust out, and it's a nice clean channel for your teeth when you're doing your back pull. When you do your back pull, it's not pulling against a bunch of sawdust. It's cutting a fresh cut, and then the rakers clean it back up. Another fresh cut. This saw can really buck up some wood in a hurry, and it's not terribly large. It's they're not commonly found. This one was actually a garage sale find, and like I said, it was issued by the U.S. Forest Service many years ago when I lived out west, out in the northwest Rocky Mountains. The Bureau of Land Management and the Forest Service, many of the trail maintenance rangers carried these, and as late as the late 1950s, firefighters, wildfire firefighters carried these. But that's what I put my shelter together with. So if anybody's wondering, do I cheat when I go off camera and use a chainsaw? No. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're keeping track of our videos. I'm going to end this for part 4. I'm going to go cut some boughs, and then we'll do our part 5, and I'll make my bed. You all have a nice day, and look us up, follow us along. Let's get going on the next one.